And that will be sent out later on this afternoon. So if you want to go back and reference anything that is covered during the session, feel free to do so and go back and reference that. Also attached to that recording is going to be a questionnaire. So we certainly appreciate your feedback as students and alumni here at WGU. We want your your input as far as, hey, what you might be looking for in sessions. A lot of the sessions that we end up hosting are based off of that feedback, so we certainly would appreciate it. Should take you no more than 2 minutes to fill that out. So that will also be attached. I'll also share that questionnaire in the chat here as we kind of get going. And another reminder as we kind of move forward, there's quite a bit of people in the session. Just make sure when you're asking questions, they're focused on the greater good of the group, and it's not just an more individualized type of question. How this is going to be structured is we have some preset questions that we'll be asking, and then at the end we'll have an opportunity for you to post questions into the chat, and we'll read those off. So just kind of a heads up, if you do have questions, I would save them towards the end, post those into the chat, and then we will read those off. And without further ado, I'm very excited for our presenter. As a sports fan, it's great to connect with individuals in professional sports. I also have the pleasure of calling this individual my sister-in-law, so excited to have her on here. So Emmy, if you wanted to introduce yourself for those of you that maybe didn't read in the bio, Emmy is the Director of Baseball Research and Development for the Tampa Bay Rays.
Thanks, RJ. Hi, guys. As RJ said, my name is Emmy Dolphy. I'm currently the Director of Baseball Research and Development for the Tampa Bay Rays. I have been with the Rays for a little bit over 5 years now. And I guess a little bit of kind of my history prior to getting here. So I went to Colgate University. I majored in math and geography there. I also played softball there. And sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat. Who is Jonathan? Yeah, you're welcome for Andrew Friedman, by the way. But yeah, Colgate, math and geography, played softball there. I ended up actually pursuing kind of the geography path for a little while, and I went to grad school at George Washington for a master's in applied geospatial techniques, did a lot of kind of climate science, climate change research. Ended up getting a job out in Santa Fe, New Mexico with a land conservation nonprofit called the Trust for Public Land. Did some work on spatial analysis of park access, urban park access in cities to make sure, I guess, all socioeconomic kind of bands were served within walkable park access. And then, yeah, after decided to kind of chase my second passion outside of conservation and sustainability within sports, ended up landing a junior analyst role with the Tampa Bay Rays, like I said, about 5 years ago, and am now currently the director of our research and development department. I appreciate everybody that's here.
And the previous experience that Emmy's had, that's quite the mouthful, Emmy. So and quite the transition going from one to the other. So first question that I have for you is, how is the research and development team with the Rays structured, and what are the primary functions of the team?
Yeah, for sure. I'll talk a little bit about what we do as a department and then how we're kind of branched out from that for those purposes. So I'd say there's like three main functions within research and development. And we are just a sub-department of baseball operations. There are a bunch of different departments in baseball operations that I can speak to later. But research and development, we have about 25 staff that range from coordinators, junior analysts, up to senior analysts, lead analysts. And the three kind of primary functions here are One is predicting future player performance. So something particular with the Tampa Bay Rays, we have a very low payroll in comparison to a lot of other teams, such as the Dodgers. So yeah, so I mean, the name of our game is kind of finding the diamonds in the rough, and the predictive models that we build that help kind of predict future player performance, how we expect that player to contribute to our team currently in this season, also in 5 years is going to matter. And that's something we invest a lot of time in. So an example there is, how do we expect an 18-year-old that we want to draft in the first round to actually perform when they're in a professional? Let's say right now, currently in our current season, we're looking for offense. Do we have a pitcher that we might be able to trade for, let's say, an offense forward outfielder? How do we expect that outfielder to contribute for the rest of the season as well as in future years? And what kind of value would we gain from making that trade? So player valuation is one. The second is player development. So obviously there's more than just our big league team. We have an entire farm system from, the rookie leagues. We have single A, double A, triple A. So we have a bunch of players that are in our organization, and it is our job, essentially, the function of that department is to develop these players to become major league caliber players. Research and development helps kind of by identifying strengths and weaknesses of our existing players, identifying kind of different mechanical changes that they could make to perhaps induce more spin on their curveball to strike more players out, or hitters out, for example. So we will help kind of identify different kind of mechanics, different skills that we think we can change in players and help them on their path to making the big leagues. The third function is very much kind of major league focused and winning as many games as possible. I like to think that the player evaluation and the player development help us build a really good team. And then the third facet, the in-game strategy, is really about how can we make the most out of the team we put on the field. And so examples of some questions we answer there is, who is kind of the best lineup when we're facing Garrett Cole? What batters do we want out there that we think are going to perform the best against Garrett Cole in that game? Also, how do we want to position our outfield against Aaron Judge? We know he's going to hit a lot of homers. How does when he hits ground balls, where do we want to be standing to make sure we field as many of those as possible? So that's an example kind of the in-game questions we answer. And yeah, three facets: future player predictions, player development, making our farm system as good as possible, and then the in-game strategy component. And I guess, RJ, that was a long-winded answer to the second half of your question, but first half of your question in terms of how R&D specifically is structured, I would say it follows those three kind of facets pretty closely. We have one group that's baseball analytics. That group is focusing on our current player projections, our transactions at hand, making sure that the information everyone else in R&D is putting together is digestible and interpretable by, say, our major league coaching staff or our general manager and other folks that are kind of helping aid in those transactions we make with other teams. Another group is our fundamental research group. They are kind of tied very closely to that player development facet, where we're trying to identify these skills that make players better. So what are kind of can we change the mechanics of this pitcher's curveball to make it more elite? And how exactly do we do that? And then lastly, we have a predictive modeling group. They are very tied to kind of that future player evaluation. It is their job to essentially make our current player evaluation models that much better so that we're making better decisions in the future. We want to recognize kind of what the limitations are of our current infrastructure, and they are very, very statistics heavy group. We have some PhDs in statistics. We have some non-traditional backgrounds that I'll touch on later. But yeah, that's a very statistics heavy, building kind of the future player predictions as well as we possibly can.
And as a New Yorker, thank you for using the Yankees players as examples. So I certainly appreciate that. But
so sorry about Garrett Cole, RJ.
What next question that I have is, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so it's definitely changed over the years. I would say a typical day for me now is very different between whether we're in season and off season. So basically, from I'd say the start of spring training, which is mid February, through hopefully the end of November after we win the World Series, the days are pretty reactive. We have pregame data coming in that we need to get ready for series. We have postgame data that we need to analyze. How hard was this ball hit? How good was this pitcher slider? That sort of thing, so we can make those kind of quick adjustments to our major league team. And I personally oversee our defensive positioning for the major league group. So I am in conversations kind of with coaches, just how do we want to make an adjustment to last night's positioning? Was somebody very off from how we would recommend they position themselves, that sort of thing. That's the most kind of external facing stuff. The internal facing stuff that I see on the day to day is just kind of communications kind of with our assistant general manager group, our general manager, to kind of just decide on what are the highest priority projects that we should be spending our time on. Currently, we're about 2 months away from the trade deadline, which is end of July. Very busy time of year for us. We want to make sure that we're spending our time as efficiently as possible on the highest impact projects that help kind of inform the decisions we'll be making in the next couple months. Off season is kind of take the first two pieces out where there's not as much interaction with coaches because we're not playing, and there's not as much kind of positioning conversations just because we're not actively positioning our players anywhere. But it's a little bit more research oriented. So if there was a major update I would want to make to our positioning based on kind of something we might not have done that well at last year, I will take that off season, those months in the off season, to dig into that research and finalize that prior to the beginning of spring training in mid February.
And kind of going into some of those interactions that you had just touched on, how does your role fit in with the larger organization? So, what type of interactions do you have with players, with coaches, with front office staff? Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can talk about, I was at the ballpark yesterday. When I go to the ballpark, the intention is to, have conversations with coaches and players. They might have seen something in the game the night before, and want to ask about it. Should we be making different decisions? And just an example of something that came up yesterday, I was talking to our third base coach about how our infield, let's say we have a batter up and there's a runner on first. That runner on first decides to steal. Should our second baseman or our shortstop cover the bag, given kind of the spray chart of that batter? So, depending on where they hit their ground balls, would we rather lose our shortstop or would we rather lose our second baseman? And what's kind of the best decision analytically? So, we had a conversation about that. I didn't have an answer for him that day. So I will take that question, come back, do some research on it, and decide kind of what we think is the best there. In the past, have conversations with our manager kind of around some catcher defense performance that we wish was a little bit better this year, and just brainstorming ideas around how to make that better. And then outside of kind of the coaching staff, most of that happens at the ballpark when I'm at the ballpark. But in the front office outside of that. So I oversee our fundamental research and our predictive modeling group. And so a lot of my interactions with the front office staff are really just kind of talking through, giving updates on kind of the progress of our current projects. How we, let's say that with our old system, we think this player is a C plus, and with the new system, they're actually an A plus. We need to be able to justify that move, especially to those decision makers. And so, really having conversations with our analysts to understand what all is going on and how we got there, and then being able to translate that to our decision makers so they are comfortable acting on that information.
And I'm assuming this would vary team to team based off of how um, how much an organization might lean into the data side of things. But how do how do some of the in-game analytics impact the coaching decisions, let's say in real time? Is it something that they're making the call on this like prior to the game? Is it something that changes during the course of the game? Can you kind of speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, the answer to your question is there's a bunch of different ways. We have some stuff that impacts kind of how we decide to approach that game, knowing what we know before it starts. And then there might be a decision where, we want to decide if we want to put a pinch runner in at this point in the game. It could be really early in the game. If we put a pinch runner in, we would lose that person that we basically substituted in for. And we want to make the decision, is that worth it? Yes, you'll gain a lot on assuming you put a speedier runner in, but maybe the person you're taking out is a really good defender. Are you okay giving up that positive defense to make that change? Maybe the person you're taking out is a really good hitter. Are you willing to lose out on two positive at bats? And it is our job as R&D to essentially build tools that aid the coaches in those decisions. It is in no way this coach has to do what we recommend by the numbers. It is very much, here's what we recommend based on the data we have. Now, this is a guide, this is a recommendation, and it is Kevin Cash's job, or Kevin Cash's decision ultimately whether he chooses to act on that or not. But we, take a lot of feedback from him of like, hey, I actually disagreed with this. Why was the recommendation this way when I instinctually felt it should be this way? That's an example of a conversation we have a lot. Post game, we'll look into that information. And I'd say most of the time, he's right. He has identified a flaw in the model we put forward. And then it's our job to, okay, we should consider this as well. It's going to make our numbers better. And then, yeah, RJ, kind of just to your point about like things being different for different teams, like I think that cycle of back and forth and getting questions kind of from coaches and all that is really due to the amount of buy-in that we have as an organization. And I'm very, very confident that is not industry wide. I'd say maybe there's 10 teams that have information forward that coaches are as comfortable making decisions on as what we put in the dugout for our guys. It is getting larger. I'd say 5 years ago that number was probably 3. And R&D is definitely expanding throughout the industry, but yeah, the Rays in particular, we were definitely one of the first to do it, and I think that maintaining that buy-in is probably the most important mission of our group in order to be successful.
And for reference, Kevin Cash is the manager of the Rays for those that aren't familiar. What is he like to work with? Like, is he like is he open to some of your recommendations? I mean, you touched on, you having some of those conversations with him, and for the most part, he's right in some situations. Is he easy to work with? Is he? And I promise I won't be sharing this session with him if you do bash him a little bit. But what is he like to work with?
He deserves no bashing whatsoever. He's very open to our suggestions, and I think he's also not afraid to speak his mind when he thinks we're wrong. And that's what makes the relationship so strong. He has decades of baseball knowledge, both as a player and as a coach, and different roles of coaching on top of that. He has his brain works in ways that ours does not. And so I think it's very important to get to the point where he values what we're bringing to him, but we also return that, like, understanding the value he brings to us is massive as well. And I can't take credit for that relationship building at all. Like, that has been a work in progress for about 10 years at this point. And it took a long time. Like, it takes a long time to get that buy-in. But I don't think there's a manager out there like Cash that has that really, really good mixture of general understanding of what we're trying to do, but also not really doesn't hold back when he doesn't feel like it's the thing we should be doing, essentially. And it makes us better.
Diving into the technology side of what you all do. Can you touch on like what are some tools, what are some technologies that you're using on a day-to-day basis to deliver some of this information to the baseball, to coaching staff, to players, to front office?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say, as the analysts are primarily using R as our coding language, we're R shop, as they call it. SQL is another tool that's used kind of throughout all of baseball operations. It's not just R&D. All of our databases are held in SQL. Python is, I'd say, the next kind of most common skill set that we have throughout the group. My personal knowledge on, or my personal opinion on coding in general is when you get really good at one, it's very easily translated to a bunch of different coding languages. So if anyone here is interested in learning coding, I would suggest probably Python first. It's the stupidest language of them all, which means that you have to tell it to do everything, and you really, really kind of learn the logic behind coding. Whereas R has a little bit more kind of built-in convenience, I would say, so you can skip over some of those fundamentals, and Python really helps you in the long run. So yeah, that's just my comment kind of on the coding side of things. And then other technologies that we're using, we have a DevOps team. They're kind of using Kubernetes is kind of our primary server management system. And for the cloud, I know there's a lot of groups that use cloud storage and cloud servers and stuff like that. We do not. We do not exist in the cloud very much. A lot of it's costs, kind of to the point of that I made earlier, where we just don't have a lot of money in comparison to other groups. We are exploring it as a potential option, but because we have a 24-hour demand where we are running things all of the time, the cost of the cloud can get pretty high. I cannot speak to the industry, so I'm not sure if other teams are using the cloud. I would assume that they are, and we're just the odd duck.
What what is a typical career progression for somebody? And really, this is focused on the Rays because you had brought up, you're not familiar with maybe what are some of the other organizations are doing, but what is a typical career progression for somebody working in baseball ops for the Rays?
Yeah, I mean, we have a mixture of people that have been in baseball for 20 years, and we have a mixture of people that have backgrounds in other industries and decided that baseball is what they want to pursue. I'm kind of an example of that with a light background in another industry. But yeah, I mean, example, our current general manager, Eric Neander, he started as an intern with the Rays, and he has been here for something like 15 plus years. So he really kind of started at a junior level and built up to becoming kind of the leader of all of baseball operations. And then, in R&D in particular, we have a handful of folks that study data science and statistics and stuff, but we also have people that have studied oceanography and atmospheric science and geography and kind of these non-traditional backgrounds, I would say, for the roles that we're doing. And we have a lawyer on our group who was a lawyer for 25 years, partner at a law firm, and he decided to pursue his master's in data science during COVID, and he was hired as a junior analyst with us. Yeah, and I mean, I think in general in baseball, like it rarely are there like senior level positions open in baseball, to be very honest. Like a lot of other teams, if they need a VP or if they need an AGM, they're very, very likely to pull from another baseball team. So once you're in the industry, there's kind of a wide array of options once you get in. But I would just say, I started as a junior analyst and I'm now a director. And I was a senior manager before I came here. So, yeah, you kind of might need to take that step down, but you do your job well, there will be opportunities within that organization and within other organizations that will be within your grasp. as you continue to progress.
And just so people know, I see some questions coming in through the chat. We will get to questions once we get through our set questions that we have for Emmy. One that did just come up in the chat, and I kind of it kind of speaks to what you just touched on. But what are some skills, or what skills bridges the gap between your time in with the Trust for Public Land and your current role with the Rays?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like the coding, that there's the technical skills and all that. So I learned coding, I learned Python in undergrad, used Python and R in grad school, used almost exclusively Python for those 5 years at the Trust for Public Land. That is the skill I think that kind of got me the start in both industries for sure. But other than those kind of technical skills, I think something that translates really well and something that I think is absolutely imperative kind of to a successful R&D group is just communicating very technical concepts to non-technical people. So that is kind of part of my job a little bit, where I am having a conversation with someone who is a PhD from MIT, that knows I have no idea, but knows the statistics of these models like the back of their hand. He has to translate it to me. I have to have enough technical understanding to be able to know what's going on, and then also be able to translate that into a non-technical way where I'm describing that model to our manager, Kevin Cash, or to our general manager, Eric Neander. And without that link in between the two, and if Cash doesn't understand it, if Eric doesn't understand it, they're not going to act on it. And that is just the crucial kind of bond between the two sides. And I think in any kind of data oriented role, a data science team, a data analysis team, or R&D team can sit there and spin their wheels and create the most beautiful, accurate, perfect models ever known to man. But if those are not used for a business purpose, they don't mean anything. And so that bridge right there, and that is similar to what I did at the Trust for Public Land, where I was having conversations with city parks employees that did maintenance on, those parks, and I had to describe kind of how we calculated walkable access, what data we needed, what data was, how they could go about kind of collecting that for us, that sort of thing. So that's definitely been a skill tested throughout both roles. And I think moving forward, it's probably my highest priority skill that I want to make sure I continue to train.
Next one that I think is people might be interested in. So what are some recent trends or advancements in baseball analytics that have changed the way the Rays have kind of operated?
Yeah, I mean the biggest kind of data source I would say that is available now to all Major League Baseball teams is what we call biomechanics data. And so historically in baseball, we had the ball position throughout the life of a pitch, the ball position after the ball was hit. We have the position of the players standing, our shortstop, our right fielder, our center fielder. We know where they're at on the field, and we know where the ball is traveling at the same time. What the biomechanics data brings us is, in addition to kind of just the general center of mass, so the centroid of kind of their body, we also know where their shoulders are positioned, where their arms are positioned, kind of what the hip rotation is while they're throwing a pitch, what their neat leg lift is in their mechanics. For batters, we can very easily calculate what their bat speed is, what their mechanics are with their stride, with their hip rotation, that sort of thing. So it opens up a ton of opportunities for us to really understand what exactly is happening on the field that leads to good results, which will, of course, contribute to our player development side. It will also contribute to our major league team. It will contribute to our decision making when we're acquiring players from other groups. And I would say that as an organization, in order for us to kind of maintain our innovative status within the industry, we have to make really, really big strides in that biomechanics side of things in order to stay ahead.
Is that something that you're communicating that to the coaching staff or the training staff? Is that something that you're directly communicating right to the players? Like, how does that work?
So I would say that the primary communication for me is coaches. There are conversations that I do have with players, but in general, I think it's more the coach's job to interpret what we're giving them and communicate that to the players. There are some analysts that have more conversations with players, but for the most part, it's, hey, we noticed this mechanical issue with this pitcher, with this hitter. We first kind of have a conversation with the coaches. Does this seem reasonable? Is this what you're seeing? Can you please watch their last 10 swings and see if this lines up with what we're finding? If so, okay, let's do some research on it. Could this be the reason why we've seen poor results on their last 10 swings? And a lot of that back and forth kind of goes through the coaches. And then ultimately, the conversation with the player would either be directly from that coach, or the analyst and the coach will go in with the player to discuss the findings.
Outside of technical skills, what makes an employee successful in a role with the Rays in research and development?
Yeah, I mean, definitely touching on like the translating the technical information to non-technical audiences. I think that's a number one thing for me. And then I guess the second is really the ability to adapt. This was something I really, really struggled in when I first came on with the Rays. When I was at the Trust for Public Land, it was a very structured environment. It was very much 8:30 to 5. I had kind of a very, specific set of tasks throughout the day. If I was done, I was able to, come home and not bring my laptop, and it was all gravy. But baseball is one, things are constantly changing. There are new data sources such as biomechanics data. And in order to stay ahead of teams, you have to stay ahead of all of that work. So sometimes it can be fire drillish, and just understanding that there are high times and there are low times throughout the season is something very important. And then also, like I mentioned, like you might, if you're making a career change and you're, hired in as a I don't know, a baseball operations associate or something like that. You might be working in arbitration, and then you might be working in video tagging for this player, and then you might also be traveling to our affiliate to have a conversation with this coach about this research. You might have 15 different hats that you're wearing throughout that role. It is very much dependent kind of on the needs of the organization at that time. And like I said, it was a big adjustment for me, coming from the other organization, but it's been a fun ride, and I've learned a lot, and I'm constantly challenged. So that's just I guess a fair, if anyone's going to get into the industry, at least my experience with the Rays, that's just something to be prepared for.
And then the last question that I have before we kind of turn it over to the chat, which we do have a bunch of questions, which is fantastic. How might somebody get their foot in the door with, let's say, we could use the Rays, we could just do professional sports in general. So what are some recommendations that you might have for somebody that might be interested in getting into this profession?
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, just the one point I had touched on earlier in regards to like, you may not feel like there's a position open that kind of matches your skill set, and you're looking for kind of a director level role or something like that. The chances of finding that are probably much lower in a sports organization. At least, again, I'm speaking very, very much for the Rays and the baseball industry. I'm not sure for other sports, but a lot of kind of the higher up hiring happens internally within the industry. So I guess don't be afraid to take a risk. If it's something you really, really want, don't be afraid to, may potentially apply for a job that you feel is slightly more junior than what you're currently at. If it's a passion you want to chase, you will be able to prove yourself in that position that you are deserving of something higher. So don't be scared of that. The second thing I would say, from an R&D perspective, if you are interested in working with data in some sort of data science, data analysis role, there's a ton of public data available for sports. You can download baseball data from MLB's StatCast. There's also Fangraphs data for baseball. I know there's open source hockey data, soccer data, basketball data. There's a lot of things out there that you can just grab on your own, start playing around with. There's the Kaggle competitions where they provide data, you submit a project and you kind of get rated on that, and you get to present your work and those sorts of things. So it's kind of this fun thing. Point being here is, I would say, build out your portfolio so that when you are applying to these jobs, you're able to show what you can do with this data and that you have experience with sports data. It's just an extra kind of edge above everybody else. And you can also, put that out in the public and get some feedback kind of on how that's going. Some account that I think is interesting to follow that, aligns somewhat similar to what we do as an R&D group. It's called Tango Tiger. I believe he works for the MLB, and he just does some pretty cool stuff with the StatCast data. And I would definitely recommend kind of reading through his tweets and getting a sense for what some projects are that we work on.
Awesome. Just a few announcements before I jump back into some of the questions that have come in through the chat. Reminder session is being recorded. That will be shared out. So, Emmy just went through a ton of information. If you want to go back and reference any of those points that she had made, certainly feel free to do so. Also, what I'm going to do in the chat, I'm going to post our survey that I was talking about. We certainly appreciate your feedback as students and alumni here at WGU. We take a lot of this feedback into consideration in terms of what types of sessions that we were looking to host for you all. So feel free to fill out that question or that feedback form. Should take you no more than 2 minutes. And that will also be sent out with that recording. So also, we had done it at the beginning, but take advantage of this opportunity to network with each other. So if you haven't done so and you'd like to share your LinkedIn in the chat, connect with each other, there's a level of interest here just in terms of similar interests. So it might be a great opportunity to connect with some of your peers, current WGU students from around the country or alumni from around the country. So if you haven't shared your LinkedIn, certainly I would do so. Connect with some of the individuals that are also here attending this session. So diving into some of the questions from the chat. First one, how has the advancement of AI impacted your role?
Yeah, that's a great question. AI is blowing up everywhere. I'd say personally, I can speak to the Rays. I can't really speak to the industry as a whole, but we use AI pretty regularly to just kind of improve the efficiency of how we do work. It could be that we have a DevOps question that is fairly easy, but our DevOps person isn't available. Let's see if we can figure out how to answer that question on our own. Maybe we want some thoughts about what should go into a model that predicts whatever this target variable is. Let's use some AI to get some ideas of what we might want to put in there. I'd say it's a light use on our end, but it does help out with some kind of low-hanging fruit if you can learn how to ask it the right questions, which is a nice lesson that I've been constantly learning because I ask it dumb questions. But yeah, I'd say that's kind of the evolution for us. And a challenge we've run into with AI a little bit is making sure our hiring process is protected from someone solely using AI to accomplish it. So that's been a challenge for us too. We just want to make sure we're evaluating the candidate as a whole and assessing kind of their knowledge appropriately.
What are the most common mistakes or misconceptions you see from candidates trying to work in baseball?
I would say, and this again is a very much R&D specific, I guess kind of baseball operations wide, but our hiring process is not traditional. It's going to ask you some questions about how would you have made this trade? How would you go about deciding what salary you want to offer this player in arbitration? It's going to, we really try to dig into your thought process more than anything. I would say that having a general background in baseball knowledge is pretty important in the hiring process. Doesn't mean you have to understand every aspect of the game. It not at all. You do not even need to be a sports fanatic to do it, but just being up to date kind of on the current research in the industry and just really exposing yourself to it, understand how it works, understanding what arbitration is before you try to answer that question, and reading articles on arbitration. I think some people jump into they get very excited about applying to the job and just want to show their skills, and they just throw us the kitchen sink of everything they know, and it can be hard to interpret what the thought process is behind that, other than okay, they have a lot of skills, but the application might not be there. So I think just spending a lot of time on really what the business case of my argument would be when I'm applying, I think that'd be important to spend time on for sure.
I love this next question, and I haven't had the opportunity to ask you this yet, so I'm excited to ask it. What data is used to determine when an opener will be used, and how long in advance is this planned out?
We have some baseball fans up in here, don't we? We did invent the opener. An opener, for everyone that doesn't know, so essentially in baseball, traditionally, there's a starting pitcher that kind of starts in the first inning and then throws basically until they've reached their pitch limit, or they've reached, or they are losing the game very badly and need to be taken out. An opener, some research with the Rays, we basically found out that there are certain pitchers that perform better in the middle innings versus in the first inning. And so we have kind of an opener that's technically a reliever that's supposed to come in at the end of the game. They pitch the first kind of inning or so. Then we have a starter that's traditionally a starter but comes in later. And then we proceed as normal after that. How it's decided, what data we use, I guess, is looking at kind of performance historically throughout different cycles in the order. So we want to know, are they performing better in the first inning, the first time they see those batters? Are they performing better the second time they see those batters? So that's one consideration for sure. And then I would say that 99% of the time that is decided well beforehand if we are going to use one. If there are any I guess Yankees fans in the house that remember the playoffs in 2020 when Aaron Boone tried to suddenly have an opener and he never tried it throughout the season. And then Devi Garcia got absolutely pummeled by the Rays in the playoffs because Aaron Boone was trying to be Kevin Cash. Yeah, sometimes when you do it at the last second, it doesn't work. So we like to pre-plan. There's got to be trash talk on here. Sorry. It's my brother-in-law.
That hurt. Next question. Do you use Google StatCast?
So yeah, StatCast is, I know there's like commercials for Google StatCast. So StatCast is the name of the data that is basically collected by MLB. We use a Hawkeye system is the name of kind of the vendor. It's a camera that is set. There's multiple cameras set up throughout each stadium, tracks the ball position, and the player positions and stuff like that. The StatCast data, for the most part, is publicly available. We also use that data, yes, to answer the question. And yeah, there's a ton of it out there. So go for it and try it out.
What skills would a team be looking for an entry-level analyst position? Do teams want a project portfolio, that demonstrate specific skills? Is it really geared towards, some of the situations that you might put people in through the interview process? What are some, and you can kind of take this from a Rays angle, obviously.
Yeah, for R&D in particular, definitely like there needs to be a kind of minimum technical background, a coding background that needs to be met in order for kind of us to consider whether that's like there is the hiring process. A project portfolio is always helpful, I think, on the side. If you don't have the coding background, there are still kind of article reviews that you can do, that you can put together and decide kind of this team made this trade. Would I have made it or would I have not, and why? And then I think, and I can't again speak to other teams and how they do this, but a part of our hiring process in all aspects is we do a fit interview with everyone. So kind of the cultural fit of everybody is very, very important to us as an organization. You could have technical skills out the wazoo, but if you're not going to treat your colleagues right, or if you can't communicate things well, it's going to be hard for us to make the case to hire you. So I'd say, just like if you make it to the interview phase, I think it's just really important to like, it sounds corny, but just like be yourself and be open about it. And if it's the right fit, it should be the right fit on both ends. And hopefully you feel that as well throughout that part of the process.
And next one, do you think a passion for baseball is required to work for an MLB team?
I wouldn't say a passion for, so, let's see how I want to answer this. A general competitive spirit is very important to working in sports. You don't have to understand. We have someone that grew up in India, and he literally had no idea what baseball was when he got the internship here. He knows cricket really, really well, but has now learned baseball over time. And I'd say it's the general kind of competitiveness. I've played pickleball with him, and he is absolutely competitive. So having kind of that competitive spirit is very, very important. I think passion for baseball can grow for sure, but what makes the part of this job so much fun is your kind of like buy-in to the major league product, where you're really, really care if your team is winning, and knowing kind of your contribution to making that happen. That is one of the most fun parts of the job. So I wouldn't say it's required, but it absolutely makes the job that much more enjoyable to feel like you're a part of something bigger.
Have you ever felt, and this is a me question, have you ever been watching a game and maybe, Cash did something that you recommended and it ended up working out for you all, and you just sitting there, and maybe you're at the ballpark or you're watching it home on TV and you're like, I came up with that, or my team came up with that. Like what does that feel like?
I mean, it's awesome. I've been listening to the radio, and I have a decent relationship with our broadcaster, and he said, "Oh, what beautiful positioning! Like shout out to Emmy Dolphy," and that was pretty awesome. That was pretty awesome to hear my name on the radio for sure. But then you have the other end, when I was in the ballpark yesterday, where I was talking to our infield coach, and he was like, "Yeah, I wanted to go with my instinct, and I went with my instinct for a few pitches, and then I decided to actually listen to the recommendation on the infield positioning. So I moved our third baseman in, which was my recommendation. And then the batter blew the ball by our third baseman because he was too shallow. So it happens sometimes, and sometimes you mess up. But the purpose of our job is, on average, the numbers we are putting forward are going to work out in our favor, and we cannot react to the noise of, half the time it's not going to work, half the time it is going to work, or I guess more than half the time it is going to work. We just need to trust that it's not 100% accurate, and our job is literally to quantify uncertainty, and you're never going to be 100% correct in that.
What is the importance of leveraging your own internal data over public data within your organization and using it to make decisions on trades or roster construction?
It's a great question. We are constantly trying to stay on top of public data sources for sure. So we have all of our, I would say that every product you see externally, we typically have an internal version of that. I think we use that as kind of a baseline of, okay, here's this public source of this pitcher's future projection is our baseline. How can we build a model and make it better than the public projections? Knowing that there are a lot of teams that are using the public data sources as their primary source and their public projection sources. So it's our job to make our models that much better than the public. And sometimes it comes in handy where we find out that the public is better at quantifying this skill, we're better at quantifying this skill. Let's use them both, and we can make an even better decision on that front. But to answer the question in short, we use our data as much as possible. We use the public data as kind of a comparison to make sure we're in fact building something that's better. And just, kind of continue on from there.
Next one, in regard to player evaluation, does the organization use the 20/80 grading scouting scale, or is there a metric that maybe you might use within the Rays organization that is more commonly used?
Yes, I never knew about the 20/80 scale until I joined here. So it's originally a scouting scale where for those who are not familiar with it, 50 is average. So if you're talking about a 50 hitter or a 50 runner, they're an average runner. Every 10 points on that scale is one standard deviation from the mean. So you're talking about a 70 runner. They're 2 standard deviations away from the mean. They are, the top 5% of all sprinters, of all runners in the major leagues. You're talking about a 30 slider. That pitcher's slider is not good, and please don't throw it. We use it a lot, basically. We overuse it. We use it in social contexts. It just becomes a thing within the baseball group. But I would say common kind of scales that are also used for projection systems in particular are the runs scale and the wins scale. So if anyone here is familiar with WAR, it's wins above replacement. There's also RAR, which is runs above replacement. And there's RAA, which is runs above average. So there's a lot of these kind of acronyms. I would say runs and wins are a very common scale where you're essentially trying to quantify how many additional wins or runs does that player bring this team, and how does that compare to the rosters of other groups.
Do lower season pitch counts early in a pitcher's career really help with longevity? It seems like young pitchers still end up with major arm injuries.
Yeah, that is a fantastic question, and that is a very active topic of research, both within Major League Baseball, within turn all throughout teams, of just kind of understanding pitcher injuries and why they're happening. There are arguments that when they banned the sticky stuff, that was causing a lot of arm injuries. For those that are unaware, you were allowed to kind of put this sticky stuff on the baseball and it gives you a better grip, so you could spin the ball better and you get more kind of rotations on it and your ball would move more. We banned that because pitchers were getting too good, and I say Major League Baseball banned that because pitchers were getting too good. Offense was very down, and from a fan experience, it kind of sucks to go to every game and just watch people strike out 17 times. So getting rid of that, making it more exciting. So that's been an argument. There's also, controlling pitch count, of course. There's also the argument where higher velocity, throwing the ball harder is the name of the game these days. So, a couple decades ago, you threw a 94-mile-an-hour fastball. That was awesome. Now we have pitchers that are literally touching 102, 103, very few of them, but 98 miles an hour is kind of the average in a bullpen for the most part. Pitchers are throwing harder, which means they're like getting more torque kind of on their elbow when they throw anything that's moving. And I could imagine that causes issues over time. So I do not have an answer to your question, but I would say that it's definitely a very big area of focus, that injury prevention side for pitchers, because once you go down for Tommy John, you're down for a long time.
And I'm watching the time here. Just a reminder, everybody, this was recorded. So if you do want to go back and reference anything that's covered, you can certainly do so. I'm also going to throw that survey in the chat once again. And from here, I do want to wrap things up. Emmy, we appreciate you jumping on. Any closing remarks or anything that maybe you wish we asked or we covered during this? And I want to give you that platform to be able to share.
I don't have too much. I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate all the engagement with the questions. It's been really fun to join you guys for this. So yeah, thanks so much, and good luck if anybody's trying to break into the industry. I hope it goes well for you, and go Rays, not the Yankees.
Emmy, thank you again. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you everyone for jumping in today. Hopefully you found the session valuable and you took something away and you're able to apply it to your career. But Emmy, thank you for taking the time to jump in, share some great insight, and hopefully you enjoyed a little trash talk back and forth.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.